So, welcome back, parents, to another Conversation Starter. Pastor Mario, and today we have two youth leaders with us today. We got Dawson and Jackson, both of which have been on Conversation Starters individually, but now we got a whole round table, and it's really good. So we'll see. We'll try to keep this as low as 20 minutes, but it could easily get up to an hour. So I have been gone for 2 weeks. Yesterday was my first youth Sunday back after having our baby. These great gentlemen were holding down the teaching fort, and so I'm very thankful for them. And so, but to give you guys a recap, we have started the new series in the book of James called Faith and Works, and we're just going through the book of James expositionally. And so Dawson started us off on, when was it, the 6th, like 2 weeks ago. And so I'll let you give a small little recap of kind of just, doesn't have to be long, but just give a small little recap of kind of like what you talked about. Yes, you need to pick that up.
It's my turn.
Don't fight over the mic.
It's really hard. I don't know how close to hold it.
Point it out.
It's just, you don't have to eat it. You can just, look at how far.
Yeah. He doesn't edit these very much usually, but this one.
No, there's no editing coming into this bad boy. No. No.
So yeah, I taught on just the first verse, James 1:1, which is like 8 words or something.
Yep.
But I taught on who James is, laid out the theories of who he is for the students, taught on why he gave himself the title of a bondservant, or doulos in Greek. And then I taught on who he was writing to, because he mentions the Jews in dispersion. And so I taught on what that was.
Yeah.
It was an actual historical event where the church got scattered all over the place. So
Yep.
just laid that out just as some building blocks for the rest of the series.
Yeah. And I thought that was a great way to start because, sometimes we read these books and we're like, who is James? The Epistle of James. Who's James? Who's Jude? And so it's helpful to know, oh, this was Jesus' earthly brother. And so that was a great start to the series. And then we were canceled on the 13th, I believe. And then the 20th, this past Sunday, Jackson taught. And he taught on the full chapter of James 1. And so...
Except for the first verse.
Except for you read it,
Yeah.
but you taught on verses 2 through what, 25? 27? Yeah.
It's question mark.
Yeah. So yeah, let the parents know, like, what was your approach? What are kind of the things you took away? What are some of the things you were teaching the kids?
We just did kind of like the classic Bible study format where you read a chunk of verses and then go over them. The main points of the whole thing were that God gives us a way to take joy in tribulation. That's firstly. Secondly, it's easy to forget about God, for lack of a better term, while you're making decisions and going about your life. We don't really tend to stop and run things by Jesus, before we do them. And thirdly, it's important to receive the word and apply it, not just one of the two.
Yeah.
So that's a SparkNotes version of
That's good.
what we did.
Super good. I mean, we worked through the whole chapter very well. I liked doing it that way instead of just reading the whole thing. Because usually, when we were going through Genesis, we would read the whole chapter together and then kind of pick stuff out. The way you did it was more like, all right, we're going to work through the chapter together and kind of work it. And I thought it was great. It was good participation from the students. And you just, by you calling them out, it was like, Blake, you're going to read.
Nobody wanted to do anything, so I started calling names.
You just call names, and then they do it, So I thought it was a great way to start the series. So this coming week, we'll start in chapter 2, and I'll be teaching that one. But just some questions for you parents. Because we didn't have a conversation starter after Dawson taught, we're almost going to combine both of their perspectives and teachings and develop 2 questions for you parents. So the first one is read.
That's something you want to say?
No, I think I'm gonna have to talk.
You're gonna read. You want me to read the question? Or you want to
read the question.
Read. Okay. So we.
Follow up.
So this question is gonna be interesting, and parents, roll with this with your student. Have fun with it. It's really cool because it's gonna be like almost like a deep dive. This man looks like he's about to eat it. The mic. So read Mark 3:21 and read 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 7. Both of these instances in Scripture mention, i.e., like either mention by implication James or actually mention James by name. And both of them couldn't be more different. And so I'm not going to give you any context of what that is. But the question is, why do you think James was led by God to write this letter to the dispersion, to the believers there, but also like, why did God lead him to write the letter for us? Right. And so, you have any thoughts? Some follow-up?
I think it's
No.
Next.
Jackson was hogging the mic.
Give me that mic back.
No, I think it's important to, before you go in and actually read the letter, it is important to ask why any of it's there. And specifically for the audience he was speaking to, they were going through, like he opens verse 2 is joy and trials.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost on their mind were trials. And so it makes it then interesting to go back and research who James was.
Yeah.
Because he's given a pretty heavy task of who he's writing to, what he's writing about. So to go back and be like, why did God choose him?
Yeah.
Why was he the one to address this people group and teach them these things instead of one of the other apostles? So it's a good starting point just for some really deep, further reading and understanding.
Yeah. And also to kind of connect the dots, in Scripture too. Like, okay, he's mentioned widely. Yeah, and like, who is this person that's writing this? Because it'll put a weight on what he's saying when we recognize who he is.
Yeah.
He's not just some Joe off the street.
And it can help. Like, I've found in myself, I am very historically motivated. Like, I like to know who these people are. I didn't know that until literally, start of this year. So this is the first time I got to teach in that way. But it can help you as parents to find out maybe your student is historically oriented like that.
Yeah.
Maybe they like that, and it leads them to study Scripture more. Maybe they need the building blocks around it instead of just the words of the book.
I will say that for me, that has been super helpful to know and understand that these were very real people, not just because people say it sometimes like, oh, it's just a book of fairy tales, or it's just really nice stories. But when you can actually go through human history and see that these were real people in a real time, it's super relatable. And it has helped to kind of motivate, to read the Scriptures and take it seriously.
Do you have thoughts on this first question?
Not really. All right, well then you got the second question. Do you remember what you're...
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
you got it.
So, no. I thought it would be good to go over what some practical ways are of remembering God and his sacrifice and his love for us. James in this chapter was really emphasizing the point that hey, the whole idea here is that this is what's going to save your soul. This is what salvation looks like.
Yeah.
This is how we can behave. And so what are some practical ways we can remember God when it matters, and further, when does it matter to do that?
Which is
Any questions?
not from me, but maybe from them.
You have an answer to your...
The interviewer. No, I think it's important because one thing about James' book, it's intensely practical. I mean, it's so practical. I mean, that's why it's faith and work. Like the theme is faith and works. It's merging the theological concepts of everything he's talking about with the application of how do you live this out, you know? And so, yeah, like ways, how do you remember God when things are tough? You know, how do you remember that he doesn't change? All those different things, super important and helpful.
Do you have any examples off the dome ski?
Well, I'm not going to make it easy for them.
Yeah, we don't, we want it to be a nice conversation. Dawson,
Well, no, I'm not giving an example.
any thoughts? Okay, quiet nod. He said, not at all. But anyways, all right, sweet. Yeah, thank you guys for teaching these past few weeks. You guys are definitely gifted with it. Excited for your more teachings that you guys are gonna do in the book of James. Parents, hope that this leads to some great conversation with your student. Again, don't make it totally easy. Let them scavenger hunt with the scriptures. You know, feed them like questions and stuff. Just make it fun, you know, whenever you do your devotionals or whatever. Because it is fun.
Reread James 1.
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah. Reread James 1. The whole thing. It's not a lot of verses. 27? 5?
Ish.
Something.
Good ask.
Well, if there's no final thoughts, we'll end it here. Thank you, parents, and we hope to see you soon. Hope to see your students next week. And yes, until the next one. Hello, parents. This is Pastor Mario. Thank you guys for joining us for this week's conversation starter. If you want more ways that you can engage with your youth, you could check out the other conversation starters here on my side. Thank you guys for joining us. Hope you guys are doing well.